things of that nature, 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 things of that nature.
Happy Sunday, folks. Welcome into the Pot of That Nature postgame report card following Arkansas 63-31 loss to Ole Miss. I'm Curtis Wilkerson. He's Andrew Ellis. We're with Inside Arkansas, and usually we do our raw reaction with the postgame live show, and then we do our accountability session, and we can be a little bit fired up for those things. We'd like to save our report card, which, if you're new here, is we just kind of go position by position and grade out the performance from the Razorbacks. We like to sleep on it a little bit, wake up with a clear mind, if you will, and really break these things down with what we recall from the game, the stats, the PFF grades, and everything. But I don't know, Andrew, that I feel much better right now than I did at the end of that game yesterday. I'm still a little ticked off about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if I have much of a clear-headed change in viewpoint from this. Like, I'm still very frustrated, and Curtis, you and I get to do for a living, it is a lot of fun, and I wouldn't want to do anything else, like, truly. But for anybody that thinks that we just like have fun all the time, like doing shows like this, where you have to like kind of eviscerate the entire team and talk about your frustrations, this is what they don't tell you about. This is what they don't tell you about when you're getting into media. But we're here to do it, and we're gonna be mean. But it is what it is. You have to be mean whenever when you lay an egg the way that Arkansas did yesterday. There's got to be some accountability, some criticism, and that's what we're here to offer, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, somebody has to, because Sam Pittman ain't going to do it. He didn't do it in the post game yesterday. It was just a typical, another ho-hum Eeyore post game presser. And I get it from the standpoint of, like, at this point, when you've had so many of these just inexcusable efforts at home, what is there really left to ask? Like, why is it happening? Hell, he doesn't know. If he did, it wouldn't happen anymore. Is it a cause for big picture concern? Absolutely it is, because it's a recurring theme and a pattern. So I know a lot of people were ticked off about, maybe the line of questioning wasn't tough enough after yesterday. And I even thought about that for a second, but then it's like, I don't know. Like, I mean, what the hell are you really supposed to ask the dude at this point when he's just not going to really have the answers for it?
Yeah, and I mean, it just, again, we talked yesterday about like kind of an acceptance of the situation that happened, and we felt like the players and the team on the sideline, there was a little bit of an acceptance there. I don't think it's that uncomfortable of a position for the Arkansas football team when they get blown out at home, when coaches are openly disrespecting them, when teams are running up the score on them, when teams are celebrating in their faces. I don't think it bothers them on that deep of a level. Obviously, I'm not saying they're not sad about the game. Of course, Sam Pittman's upset about the game. The players are upset. But it doesn't seem like it's one of those things that's going to make or break their lives or their seasons. Like, they're just going to move on and do whatever they do. Hope they can beat, Louisiana Tech. They're going to enjoy the bye week. Like, I think it was just kind of another day at the office for a lot of people on that Arkansas football program. And that sucks. It sucks that it's kind of at that point. And, there's a lot of talk about the program's future that's going to be had, I'm sure. But I think that's kind of the biggest striking thing that's rubbing me the wrong way, because Arkansas losing to Ole Miss is something I expected. It wasn't like I wasn't like stunned necessarily at the result, but I am just kind of annoyed now at this, how common and how familiar it feels to be in this position.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So let's go ahead and get into the grades here, Andrew. And I'm just going to give the caveat right now that, like, my absolute maximum cap for any one of these positions is going to be a C. Like, I just absolutely flat out freaking refuse to go any higher than that. And there's going to be a lot of failing grades in here. You just got 30-pieced at home. You gave up 63 points. Ole Miss set a shit ton of records on you. It was an abject disaster. So let's start with quarterback, though, where, ironically enough, I am probably the least irritated.
I was like, this might be the one you have to make the exception for.
Yeah. Taylon Green, he was 10 of 14 in this game, 158 yards. So completed 71% of his passes, 10 rushes for 16 yards. I think that's a little bit misleading, because he was effective with his legs in the design runs and in some of the times where he escaped. But man, he had no chance back there with I want to say Tennessee's, because Tennessee was the best defensive front Arkansas faced going into that game. No, Ole Miss is the best, maybe in the country. He had no chance there. It was just kind of a setting duck. they all were in the backfield, whether it was the quarterbacks or the running backs, got hurt in this game right as it looked like he was starting to find a little bit of rhythm. Like they were on a pretty impressive drive there. It looked like they were getting ready to go down and score and maybe tie the game. Hurts the knee or the back of the leg, hamstring, whatever he had going on there. He also had his ankles taped, so I'm not sure. He might have hurt multiple things there, but he wasn't right after that. Threw some balls that should absolutely 100% have been intercepted. Looking at you, Pooh Paul, but he didn't do it. And then they pretty much benched him. I wouldn't say benched him, but he didn't play in the second half because there was no need. You were getting the hell beat out of you. He was hurt. Why risk it? Malachi Singleton comes in. He goes 11 of 14, 207 yards and a touchdown. Ran it really well. He had 8 carries for 39 yards, but he had a long of 42. That tells you he got sacked a few times. When he was actually running, he was kind of shredding those dudes. Now it's important to note, Ole Miss was not bringing the heat on Malachi Singleton there in the second half, like they were him and Taylor Green in the first half. I mean, had they done that, the results that you saw there probably wouldn't be that good, but that's not Malachi Singleton's fault. He had to execute with what was in front of him. And for the most part, I thought he did a pretty nice job in there. I mean, he looked more comfortable than he did even in the Tennessee game when he got the game winner, in my opinion. Not as much with the happy feet, wasn't making a bunch of bad decisions. I mean, I thought he was good there. I'm going to give this group a C, actually. And you feel free to give them higher, but just remember, you got the ever-loving shit beat out of you in this game.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to go C+, simply because I just cannot reward too much of the entire second half was garbage time. And look, Malachi Singleton was great. I thought what's weird is I don't really have a ton of critiques for Green or Singleton in terms of they should have done this better, they should have done that better, because like you said, I don't think they were given much of a chance in that first half, and I think like we said, Singleton put up decent numbers, put up good numbers, you could argue, and according to PFF, he was Arkansas's highest graded offensive player. I thought he did a good job given the circumstances, but the circumstances cannot be overlooked, and they won't be overlooked ultimately. And also with Malachi Singleton, he came in for that one possession in the first half when Talon was first getting banged up, and it looked like kind of you would expect. Like he
3
was
plays,
overwhelmed.
3 plays minus 14 yards, and they got a field goal out of it.
Yeah, the negative 14-yard field goal drive, which you love to see. But obviously, it was good for him to be in there in the second half when they weren't bringing the house. Let him operate a little bit, throw to some open receivers. That's all fine and dandy. I'm not going to it is weird because you can look at it on paper and be like, how are you giving the quarterbacks a C+ when if you add it all together, they were 21 of 28, 365 and a touchdown. But again, when it's 42-10 to start the second half, or at least it was once they went down and scored, it is really a little bit tough to really grade any of that. So we're just going to go C+, and I feel like that's generous.
Yeah, and I'm actually gonna dock mine to a C- because I forgot about the way Ole Miss scored their first touchdown, which was with Taylor
really
back there.
Really bad stinker.
Really tough one there in his own end zone. So I'll be the negative Nancy on this one for sure. But with the caveat of you can only evaluate what you saw from Singleton. He looked really, really good in there. And that listen, if you want to look for silver linings from that, then take that away from it. But I was reminded of this last night. I was actually recording a basketball thing, and it was after the football game, and I was still irritated about it. And I got to thinking about, again, that Arkansas-Texas basketball exhibition. And I remember after that, they had gotten beaten by 30. And when we asked them some tough questions in their but I remember doing hey, this was probably an eye-opening experience or whatever for your freshmen, but you look up at the end of the night, and I think Jordan Walsh gave him 14 or something. Mm-hmm. Nick got in the double figures, and he was like, there's no silver linings here. Those are hollow. Those stats are hollow. And that's how I feel about this too. I think you got them, and that's good. I wouldn't trade them for something worse, but at the same time, realizing what that second half was is important, but not Singleton's fault. Running backs. I'll let you go first here, but I'll spit out the numbers, Andrew. Rashad Dubinion, 12 carries, 54 yards and a tutty. Let's see. Rodney Hill, 3 attempts for 16 yards and a tutty. Good to see him back. Braylon Russell, 4 carries for 2 yards. Was not healthy going into this game. Did not appear on the injury report. Shocker. But he was not 100% going into the game. You can see he was kind of working out, trying to loosen up that hamstring beforehand. And then, your guy that went for $175 on Mississippi State just wasn't really in there much against Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one where it's like not really a ton to evaluate. I'm not like angry at the running back room, but again, I'm also not going like Rodney Hill. I think all 3 of his carries and his touchdown came in the second half again when the game was over. It was 74-2. It's like it's really I'm not gonna put too much in that. Same for Rashad Dubinion. A lot of his best work came when the game was already decided, and so you kind of look at the numbers and you're like, okay, yeah, not that bad from the running backs. I don't know, C minus. Like I'm not going to knock them too bad because I don't think there's anything crazy. But although I will say, shout out to Carter. I forget. I mean, I don't know. It's Carter something. The guy that it's like the SEC Power YouTube channel. He was posting in the middle of the game. He was so offended by Rashad Dubinion's when Malachi threw him a screen pass on 3rd and whatever it was, and it was like Arkansas had room. That should have been like minimum a 10-yard gain, and he just runs right into the defender. Like,
I felt that at the moment. What it reminded me of when they run, like when we do those simulations at the Leroy, and they throw the screens out there, and it's like, damn, he's got room, and it's like they're seeking out the defender to get tackled, and stuff drives me nuts, man. I felt the exact same way.
It's crazy. And so, yeah, like Rashad Dubinion, he wasn't bad in this game, really. And I felt like actually, for the most part, because Ole Miss doesn't give up much on the run in the run game at all. I thought he actually did a decent job of like fighting for extra yardage and getting the yards that were mostly available to him. But
I would agree.
Yeah, for the most part, he was fine. Like he was very much fine. Ultimately, Arkansas needs more than just Rashad Dubinion in this running back room. They need more than just Rashad Dubinion and a few carries in garbage time from Rodney Hill. They would like to have Jaquin and Jackson back. We'll see. They probably get him back after the bye week, right, against his former squad. But
one would
I
hope.
don't feel bad about the running back room at Arkansas. Like moving forward, like they're fine. I really do. I really like Braylon Russell. I think it's going to be nice to get him some experience. I think Rashad Dubinion is borderline overqualified as a 3rd back, but this team needs Jaquin and Jackson back, and they need to play a much worse opponent, which unfortunately they will not get to do in their next game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it's just so in the first half, Arkansas rushed 23 times, 1.9 yards per carry, 43 total yards there in the first half, which is about on par with what teams do against Ole Miss, in fairness.
Almost exactly, yeah.
I'll go C minus, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you grade them? Did you say C minus? Or you go with that?
C or C minus.
Okay,
and I'll go with either one.
Wide receivers in this game, and again, it's I don't know, like you look up at the end of the game and you feel okay about some of it. It's like, Andrew Armstrong, 6 for 135. Nice. Tesla, 3 for 65. Okay, there you go, buddy. Couple receptions for Satania, 2 for 24. Jordan Anthony had another catch for 18-yarder. Tyrone Broden gets involved with 1 catch for 2 yards. Satire. Anyway, but again, a lot of that was just garbage time. And what was interesting to me about this, and I think you might be surprised at this grade, I think, because I'm going to be harsh. I'm actually going to go D+ here because of something Sam Pittman said that I actually agree with, because he was asked about what makes Ole Miss's pass rush so effective. Like, how are they able to do this and rack up all these sacks? And one of the first things he said was, well, they can play man in coverage, and they got really good corners, and we couldn't get open, which allowed them to feel fully confident bringing the heat. And I agree with that. And they were doing that in the first half, and Arkansas really wasn't getting a lot going. Then they moved to more zone in the second half. Pittman said this, and then we were able to kind of find some holes in there. Had this not have already been out of hand, they were just kept running man, and Arkansas would have continued to not get open. So that's why maybe I'm being a little bit harsher on that, with the caveat that I thought Armstrong was really good. I was irritated that he was still playing in the fourth quarter when he was making some of his catches in there. But man, he really is Mr. Consistency. Another huge game for him. Trey Harris doesn't play, so he's got to be getting closer now to passing him in the SEC leading receiver rankings. Although he's probably still behind, which tells you how good that dude is. Tesla's 3 for 65. That's great, but then he also got it punched out through the back of the end zone for a touchback. That was a killer. Well, it wasn't a kid. Didn't freaking matter. They're late. That was unfortunate, I should say. But yeah, so I do think that part of it I agreed with on Sam Pittman of it is kind of a collective effort. You look at, getting killed with sacks or whatever, and you're like, oh man, the damn offensive line, what's going on here? Or Taylon Green or whoever is holding on to it too long. But the other stuff factors into it. And I actually thought that was a good point that he made about the receivers not getting open.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what my eyes told me watching the game in that, first half. I remember Armstrong had a 43-yard reception towards the end of the first half. And I remember in the moment feeling like, oh, that was a big play. Like that was kind of what Arkansas needed. It might have already been 28-3 at that point, which again, pretty much garbage time, but not quite garbage time because it wasn't the second half. And I remember that play happening. And I remember Armstrong catching a little drag route and taking it 20 yards in one of Arkansas's first drives. Outside of that, man, there was not much going on with the receivers because, like you mentioned, they don't get open against man coverage. Jordan Anthony caught the first play of the game, or at least for Arkansas, for a nice little 11-yard gain. And that was not, again, like a designed, bring him in line of scrimmage, nobody's guarding him type of thing. When Ole Miss defenders were in front of this Arkansas wide receiver room, they didn't allow him to do much, and Armstrong was the only one who had a pulse, which is kind of been the thing with this group. And so, look, if I'm not going to give Malachi Singleton a ton of props for lighting it up in garbage time, I'm certainly not going to give the receivers he was throwing to who were wide open in some of those in garbage time as well. Because again, like to Salah, sure, you're on paper looks great, but all of it came in the second half. Broden's one catch for 2 yards came in the second half. Satania, I believe both of his came in the second half. Armstrong was actually the only one who made plays in every quarter of this game, which is kind of crazy. And again, just kind of speaks to where we're at with this receiver room. I'll give him a C-. I'm being a little bit fair, but also, guys, don't worry. I got more negative grades coming, and I believe coming very soon.
Yeah, there you go.
We're going to do the tight end situation, which again is what do you want to do?
Oh yeah, the tight ends. Like Posca was in there. He only played 13 snaps. His blocking grades were not good, which that is. Despite him catching 2 touchdown passes against Mississippi State, that's why he's in there. So that factors into it. And Luke has, listen, I'm happy to see him.
He was actually the number 1 graded player on the offense, not Malachi Singleton. I got that wrong.
Yeah, and 5 receptions for 77 yards. He had 3 of them, I think, in the first half. Let me make sure this is correct. Yeah, he had a pair of 9-yard receptions and a 20-yard catch in the first half. Early or midway through the third quarter, he had a 17-yarder. The touchdown reception was late, but it was a nice play. Good ball by Satania there, 22 yards, and he got the touchdown. Again, we're not going to gas up garbage time touchdowns when you're down by 40 at home. But it was good to see him involved again. That's what I wanted to see was let's make last week not be a fluke in terms of all of a sudden we're not going to target you again and you're not going to be making plays. They had him involved before the game was completely out of hand. That was good to see. He was fine in there. C. I said I wouldn't go higher than that. That's where I'll go. C. Fine.
I'll go C+ for the tight ends. How about that?
Andrew's pleased with Arkansas's performance in this. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it is kind of funny that we all the position groups that we've started with are the ones that I'm really not that upset with. Even the receivers who we were harsh on, I'm not that upset with them. Although they are what they are. Andrew Armstrong and a bunch of just guys.
Yeah, for sure. Offensive line F. We ready to move on?
True F on the offensive line. Let's add up the pressures real quick. It was 8 sacks is what they finished with.
8 sacks, 13 TFLs.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
Let's see. So Marion Harris was charged with 7 pressures allowed. Addison Nichols was charged with 5 pressures allowed. Only 2 for Patrick Kudus at left guard there. Only 2 for Fernando Carmona, and I guess both of them were sacks.
That's mad hat, dude. That is mad hat.
A 32.1 pass block grade. So I don't know where the mess up is on that. They only had Keyshawn Blackstock played 2 pass block snaps and allowed a pressure on one of them. Josh Braun, the only Arkansas player with a good pass block grades out at 85.4 in the pass block, only allowed 1 pressure and 40 snaps. I guess you'll take that. But it was a rough one. 18 pressures allowed as a team is an ungodly number. And I know Ole Miss has a damn good pass rush, one of the best in the country, maybe the best in the country. But they got absolutely obliterated in this matchup. I will say this, Curtis, before we move on. Mm-hmm. I did not like how much Arkansas was in empty. In fact, there was a moment where the game was still up for grabs. And I want to say this was after Arkansas got I don't know. I can't remember if it was a 4th down stop or hold Ole Miss to something, but there was at least a little bit of momentum. It was right before Ole Miss threw their first humongous touchdown pass.
Yeah.
They come back out with Taylor Green. It was right after Taylor Green got hurt, actually. I remember this now. He's banged up. He goes back out there after the next possession, and they go straight up empty. No running backs, no tight end, no
Quarterback with one leg.
no back, just straight up empty. And it was like a long developing pass play. And I'm like, so I do want to, at least say that in the offensive line's defense is that they were put in a really bad position to succeed, which, by the way, that's y'all's boy Bobby Petrino, who y'all claim that we're not allowed to critique. Like, he was bad in the first half of this game. I felt like I don't think that's crazy to say. I felt like they didn't. It's almost like Arkansas was playing and had no idea they were up against a really good pass rush. And because I understand the offensive line stinks, they're going to get beat one-on-one against good pass rushes all the time. But that's why you chip. That's why you have a running back. That's why you have a guy like Postgame who's in there just to pass protect a lot of times. Like, I don't know. I think there's things you can do, and Arkansas was just like, nah, we're going empty, and we're going to hope that Taylor Green can bail us out.
Yeah, for sure. And here's the deal. Like, people could look at that and be like, yeah, like eight sacks, 13 TFLs is a lot, but you see what they did to Oklahoma or whatever. My caveat to that would be Oklahoma, that was a 4-quarter game against Oklahoma, and they did that. It was a 2-quarter game against Arkansas, and they put up the numbers they did. Had Arkansas had a pulse and been remotely competitive in this one on the defensive side of the football, that would have given Ole Miss the green light to just continue bringing the heat throughout the course of the game. It might have been a college football record in terms of number of sacks they got in this game if they wanted it to be. That's how dominant. Think about this. Does this make you sick to your stomach? Ole Miss was so much better than Arkansas that they could have named their score. If they wanted to gain 1,000 yards, they could have gained 1,000 yards. If they wanted 15 damn sacks, they could have got 15 sacks. They could have done whatever they wanted to in this game, and they pretty much did anyway. It's a shame. It really is.
No, it really is. And I mean, it's frustrating. Anytime, like you said, anytime they tried anything in the pass rush, whether it was an extra linebacker, whether it was a safety coming down, anytime they tried anything, it got home. And it just felt like they had Arkansas overwhelmed up front. And I mean, look, it's year 5 and it's week 10, week 11. And Arkansas's offensive line is not capable of competing against legitimate SEC fronts. Like, I don't know what else to say about that. Like, and look, Sam Pittman, I mean, look, I guess we're burying the lead here. That's what Sam Pittman said pre-game. It's like, oh yeah, they got Louis Vuitton for their offensive line or their defensive line. And we got the Walmart. It's like, your head coach said it. So if you think we're being mean, it's what the freaking head coach, who's the O-line guy, that's what he said about this offensive line. And frankly, I see why the team maybe quit on his ass.
Yeah, that was unreal. And I to a degree, I understand what he was saying, but you just, first of all, you don't say that out loud. And then you also have to have a little bit of awareness of the multiple ways in which that can be, I don't even want to say taken out of context. Like, that can just be interpreted in so many different ways that if I'm a player, on that offensive line or anywhere, I'm going, well, then why am I here? Like what? So, I mean, if you're saying this about me, and like, I'm not getting, compensated, comparatively speaking to a Mississippi school, like there's just so much to take away from that. I'm semi surprised he wasn't asked about it. He's lucky that it's a bye week, because somebody would probably ask him about that on Monday, but he's going to have a week before he talks to anybody.
No, yeah, good point. I mean, he might as well have said into the microphone, or I guess it was like they had him mic'd up talking to the set or whatever. He might as well have said to the entire country, hey, if you see this game that's about to happen, if you want to be on the good team where the players are making money and they're winning games and potentially trying to play for the playoff, go there. If you want to work hard and not make money and not win and not compete at the highest level, come here.
Boy, we're the place for you.
It's year 5, dude. Like, whose fault is it that you don't have any interest in your program, that you're having to go get Walmart workers for your offensive line? Like, I just don't understand. It's like, you're in the same conference as Ole Miss. You're under the same rules as Ole Miss in terms of NIL, in terms of everything. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know who, like, we are supposed to blame for that. Like, I don't know. Right. I just don't understand why he said that.
Yeah, that was a wild one. That might actually trump the, I don't know, answer to a question last year, because I'm baffled by it. I really am.
Trump Polar Express, though.
No, it doesn't trump Polar Express. Oh, I'll never forget those days. Anyway, moving on to the defense. Look, there's really nothing good that happened here, folks. I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't want to fail every layer of this defense, because I think one stood out as the worst. So defensive line, I'm gonna go D- here. And I thought Landon Jackson played well. I thought he was impactful, but he didn't get home. Like they were talking about it throughout the course of the game, and it was like, um, he's living in the backfield. They can't do anything with him. Oh, there's Mr. Jackson again. I guess he finally did late in the game, but like it's cool if you're getting back there, but if you're not hitting the quarterback, if you're not blowing things up, if you're not stopping them from, completing 75-yard passes down the field, then what good is it really doing you? It just wasn't good enough. And, they got ran on, not a ton, but more than Ole Miss has been doing. And you didn't affect Dart and force him into any mistakes. So, yeah, I don't care what Kiwi Rose's PFF grades are. It wasn't good enough.
No, I agree with that 100%. I mean, look, and we talked about Ole Miss. Anytime they tried anything, it worked. I noticed multiple times where Arkansas would send an extra guy, send 5, send 6 guys, still weren't even coming close. There were a lot of plays, a lot of reps where like Ole Miss's offensive line coach should like tweet it out and be like, this is how you protect the pocket. This is how, if you want to take a shot, you need to block. Because it was just beautiful. I mean, they literally, Jackson Dart has all the room he wants to operate. The reason I'm going to go D, Curtis, which is higher than your D minus, is because I felt like the one thing that Arkansas did was hold up against the run. And I couldn't believe, we were actually watching it together at this point, I couldn't believe Ole Miss would opt to run the ball as much as they did. Like when they'd get down in the goal line, they were like all of a sudden trying to like win the battle in the trenches. I felt like it was very obvious Arkansas couldn't stay in front of them on the edges in the perimeter. And so I guess you give them like a little bit of a knock for, or a little bit of a prop for that, for like not getting run on. But again, didn't matter too much. And like, dude, you just got to be able to affect quarterbacks some way. You have to at least make them think there's a chance someone will come and hit me. When you have quarterbacks, like quarterbacks don't like getting hit. When you have a quarterback that knows he's not going to get hit, that's the result. He throws for a freaking record number on you. And by the way, Jackson Dart, who is a good player, has not been doing that all year because he's been facing other teams who bring pressure, who fluster him a little bit, who he at least has to think about things. He didn't have to worry. He had all day. They could run whatever type of route tree they wanted. I mean, it was 5-6 yards there in the pocket. And so D is the highest you can possibly grade this group, I feel like.
Yeah. Shoot. Good Lord, his name escaped me for a minute, which is crazy because I'm talking about Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin said after the game that that basically he gave Charlie Weiss a bunch of credit, but he was like, look, we basically drew up anything we wanted and it worked just to get guys open. And Sam Pittman even said afterwards that they have to go back. This is another indictment, man. During the bye week, you can approach it one of two ways after something like this. It's like, oh, we really want to get back out there. We wish we didn't have the bye because we want to get this nasty taste out of our mouth. Or you got to admit that you need more than a week to figure things out, which he said in this case. And then he said they got to go back and reevaluate some things that they might have been giving some things away because it wasn't like Ole Miss was doing a bunch of the tempo. They would go up there, they would see what Travis Williams had going on, they would check into something else. Maybe he would check, and then every single time Kiffin won that chess match, every single time. And so for as much credit as we've given Travis Williams, a lot of this one's on you, bud. Just for the record, that was not great. Linebackers, again, I don't even care to look at it. Like I'm giving them a D- just because you were part of a defense that gave up 700 yards and 63 points. Like that's just the bottom line to me. It's a results oriented business. Like either the other team scores or they don't, and they did whenever they want to. And so yeehaw, Ole Miss's 4-string running back didn't gash you in there. Congratulations. Like it was just it was pitiful. And a lot of that defense just flat out quit on the field in the second half. It was more noticeable on a group that we haven't talked about yet, but I just can't give credit where it's not due. I just can't do it.
100%. And I'm not going to either. The linebackers racked up tackles downfield, which they seem to do a lot. And just to further that point a little bit, I felt like the middle of the field was just wide open all game long. Arkansas's tight. Anytime teams decide to target tight ends, they bust Arkansas up. And this is a backup tight end, by the way, for Ole Miss because their guy, what is it, like Priestcorn? Priestcorn. Yeah, whatever. He was out of this game, and they had the backup guy. But according to PFF, and this is closest defender, their coverage grades are a little bit weird every now and then. But Xavier Sorey, 5 of 5, 48 yards. Steven Dix, 1 for 112 yards. Anthony Switzer, 1 for 113 yards. Larry Worth, 1 for 114 yards. Brad Spence, 1 for 123 yards. So it was spread around pretty well. But that tells, again, that you didn't hear any incompletions in there, all over the middle. Any time you wanted, it was there. I don't know where the linebackers were because they weren't getting to the quarterback as well. I don't even know if a linebacker recorded a pressure in terms of pass rush. PFF credited Sorey with 3, Dix with 1. It wasn't. They definitely didn't get home or even come close to it. And so, I don't know exactly what the linebackers were doing in this particular matchup. Again, I said that they held up pretty well against the run, but Ole Miss didn't run the ball much.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of opted to just throw it around the yard. And again, like you said, it's a chess match, and Arkansas was playing checkers out there.
Yeah, for sure. Defensive backs, it's an F, man.
It's one of the worst Fs I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was one of the single worst performances I've ever seen. In the first half, it was just busted coverages, just man on man getting beaten badly. And in the second half, it just, to me, and maybe I'm crazy, and if I am, call me out on it. It just looked like some of those guys quit out there, that they were making business decisions, weren't running as hard, weren't giving max effort. And I get it, like you're kind of getting embarrassed out there, but my goodness, man, that was bad. There was no excuse for some of the things that we saw out there from the secondary. My hope is that all of those guys agree with it in the aftermath, and that they're held accountable for it, because that was crazy, man. Jordan Watkins, I tweeted out, I said, I think it's unfair that for Arkansas, that Ole Miss was able to put Jordan Watkins in a camouflage uniform, because the Hogs can't see him out there apparently. Like, how do you get 5 touchdowns in a game? How the hell does that happen?
He had like 250 yards in the entire season or something like that, Curtis. Like, he doubled his yardage. He maybe even more than doubled. And his touchdowns. I think he maybe had 2 or 3. Just unbelievable, dude.
Jackson Dart, who has been completing 60% of his passes in SEC play, he had 3 touchdowns to one interception in SEC play. So that was like 4 games coming into this. It's like it was like video game stuff. I wanted to say it was like 7-on-7. It was like 7-on-5 or something. It was unreal how good he looked in this game, comparatively speaking, to how he's looked in previous weeks. And then Ole Miss has the best receiver in the damn country on their team. He wasn't out there. And so, like, you almost that should have helped you to a degree, and it just didn't, man. Like, I'm looking at Jordan Watkins here and just how he did his damage. 1 target, 1 reception for 27 yards against Nico Slaughter. Against Xavier Sorey, 1 target for 1 reception, 11 yards. Against Singletary, 1 target, 1 reception, 9 yards. Against Marquise Robinson, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 65 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, it was all over the place. Against Hudson Clark, 1 target, 1 reception, 62 yards, touchdown. He got him bad. Jaden Johnson got in on the fun. 1 target, 1 reception, 66 yards, touchdown. Everybody in the secondary got burned by this dude at some point. It was incredible. And something else that I thought was interesting is that Lane Kiffin said after the game, because it was like, where'd this come from? What happened? It was like, hey, we looked at it. We realized it was a complete mismatch, and we were just moving him around from play to play to get him a matchup that we liked. Like, we would just find a guy and we would make sure we got that matchup, and we were going to throw it to him every time. And it worked.
One of the things that made Travis Williams such a beloved figure in the state of Arkansas is I feel like he does a great job typically of hiding weaknesses, where if Arkansas has a guy that they don't feel great about, like a Nico Slaughter, for example, who I say his name a lot, but he's been the one that teams have typically circled as the guy they can attack. I felt like they went through a stretch there where they were kind of hiding him pretty well, which you can do in basketball occasionally, you can do in football occasionally. I thought Travis Williams did a good job of that for the most part throughout the year. And I feel like what we learned about this Arkansas defense is if you have deficiencies on the offensive side, they're usually pretty good at finding those. Like Tennessee, for example, I think they figured out, hey, this Nico kid, just really, if you put any type of pressure on him, he's gonna panic, and he's not going to be able to consistently make those right decisions. This was the opposite effect, man, where Arkansas had weaknesses and Ole Miss found all of them. And man, it's not like in a nutshell, it's like, okay, yeah, we know Arkansas secondary is, missing a couple guys, and it's not a top level group there. But man, the way for it to look that way, I don't know how you can argue that they didn't quit. You know what I mean? Like, especially, and it was early in the game too, because there was the first couple possessions, Arkansas's defense was at least kind of hanging in there. They were at least competitive. They get that huge stop on the goal line. They were somewhat like holding up in there. And then the first ball that goes over the top, which made it, I believe, a 21-3 game. Did Jackson Dart go through a stretch where he threw 4 straight passes that were touchdowns? Or was it 3?
It was 3 straight that were touchdowns. Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Yep.
When the big shot made it 21-3 and then the big shot makes it 28-3, right then, like you could have, that was when Ole Miss really realized they can do whatever they want. Their confidence was at an all-time high. And this Arkansas defense was just like, yeah, we're good. We're done. And frankly, I don't know how you don't make moves. I spoke about this on the pregame show, how I felt like Tevis Metcalf. I was like, we've heard about him so much. Maybe he could go out there. He's the backup nickel. I don't know if he played at all in this game.
I don't see him on here.
Jaheim Singletary gets benched for Hudson Clark after like 2 possessions. And look, Hudson Clark's not a horrible player or anything. Here's the thing with Hudson Clark. They moved him back to corner. A guy that like we all unanimously agreed, like,
don't blame him for that. Yeah, exactly.
No, for sure. A guy that we unanimously agreed, like, okay, yeah, you gotta kind of move him to safety and kind of hide him a little bit. Maybe not man coverage isn't his best suit. The Arkansas defense is at a point where they have Hudson Clark lining up and guarding receivers one-on-one. That's where Arkansas secondary is at. And I really just, I want to clarify that Travis Williams did a good job throughout the year of hiding all of these holes that Ole Miss has now exposed in a huge fashion. And the thing that we always give Travis credit for is his defense plays hard for him, and that all went out the window today or yesterday. It all went out the window where they no longer care to play, and they just look disinterested, man. And sometimes that happens when you face good teams. You just realize you're in a game that's tougher than you thought it was going to be, and you just roll over and quit. That's what Arkansas did, and now they've got 2 weeks to decide if they want to rejoin and try and play football again. But man, it was ugly. I mean, you read off the numbers. Every single player was getting bombed on. The coverage grades. Danico Slaughter was given a 60.1 coverage grade, which was by far the highest on the team. You got 44.9 for Singletary, 50.9 for Robinson, 48.3 for Metcalf, 41.3 for Johnson, 52.5 for Clark, 30.3 for Larry Worth. Man, it's F is generous, Curtis. It really is.
It is. No, it absolutely is. And we had somebody in the comments on our accountability session who's like, you guys are giving Hudson Clark all this love and you're shitting on the other guys or whatever. Not really. No, like Hudson Clark, first of all, he never should have been at corner. The fact that Arkansas is in that situation is, I think, an indictment on everyone else. Okay, I get it. And he got burned bad on one of those touchdown receptions. So, wasn't great there. But I tweeted out in the second half of that game and said, appreciate the effort back here from Hudson Clark. Just go watch the tape. Go watch the second half of that football game, and you see one guy in that secondary who's very noticeably standing out as just giving effort, just giving max effort, trying to get his nose in there, attempting to make plays, finishing tackles. And it was him in this one, and that's an issue. And then you go look at it, and you have you gave the coverage grades. Here are the tackling grades. Nico Slaughter, 28.9. Miguel Mitchell, 29.2. Jaden Johnson, 29.5. Jaheim Singletary, 54.2. Those guys weren't, it's just bad. It's really bad, man.
When you have a guy in Jaheim Singletary who's a former 5-star who, when he transferred to Arkansas, everybody's like, oh, hey, this guy, he's from Georgia. I'm sure he'll be able to make something work. Keon Stewart, a 5th-year senior who's played at TCU, played at Arkansas. It doesn't make sense why they are purposely choosing to play Hudson Clark over those guys. The reason why is for what you said. He at least attempts. You know what I mean? And look, we're not trying to convince you that Hudson Clark is this phenomenal defensive back out there at all. He's clearly a weakness that Ole Miss exploited as well. But the fact of the matter is, what's Arkansas supposed to do? Play guys who will openly quit, which they did. They played plenty of those, but it's I don't know, man. Maybe you just throw a freshman Selman Bridges out there and maybe that'll turn it around. Maybe that'll be how things work. But really, Curtis, unironically, at this point, I'm like, I don't see why not. With the way that the situation is played out at cornerback, you've got a guy in Jalen Braxton who may or may not be quitting the team. We aren't 100% sure. He had a bone bruise that has now lasted him for 2 months, and now there's all these rumors about him possibly entering the portal. That's a bizarre situation.
I will point out,
we're not even talking about that. But I mean, when you see the performance on Saturday, and you kind of look at the big picture and look at all the things going on, it's really, really, really concerning.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And he was asked about Braxton after the game. Like, yeah, you said maybe he'll be back after the bye. How could that help things? Whatever, standard question, made sense. And he said that that Braxton this week ran on grass for the first time since his injury. And that everything else he's been doing has been like in the pool or like on the underwater treadmill thing. And so it's like, for a bone bruise?
Did he not? He literally returned to practice at one point, like 2 weeks ago.
Not according to your head football coach.
Who, by the way, is where I'm getting that from, because he said 2 weeks ago that Braxton, he's like, oh yeah, he'll be back at practice, and
point being, what the hell is going on?
Yeah,
and if he's hurt, that sucks, man. Like, I hope you get better, but it's 8 weeks after a bone bruise, and he's just now able to ambulate on grass. I don't understand.
And by the way, I also do want to just clear up that, like, Sam Pittman is our source for these injury things.
Exactly.
He's famously very unreliable. And so, like, look, that it may be as simple as Sam Pittman lied about the injury thing, which, again, he lied about Braylon Russell's status going into the game regarding, the SEC availability report. They've been lying about a lot of things, saying Jaquan Jackson wasn't banged up when he was banged up all year, saying Luke he was not on the injury report for a while. He was banged up all year. And so, look, it may be just as simple as they're being dishonest with the injury stuff, which is fine. Like, if you want to do that, cool. But it leads to all these questions of, like, what the hell is going on?
Mm-hmm. Here's my question, and we're about to wrap up here, but I think the thing that I was most frustrated about is seeing the just a little bit of, well, not a little bit, like the give up in there. And my point being, like, we saw that last year against Auburn. We saw it last year against Missouri, but the wheels had already fallen off. Arkansas came into this game above 500 in SEC play, 5-3 overall, a chance to clinch bowl eligibility and really put together a good season for themselves, 7-8 wins, whatever, and kind of get this thing trending back in the right direction. So my question is, what happened between the Mississippi State game and Saturday morning for us to get, like, how did we get here? I just don't understand what happened. It's so bizarre to me.
It really just comes down to, you have to convince this team to show up. Like, literally every time that they don't show up at home, there's some type of reasoning that they'll come up with. Well, we're coming off of a tough game, and so we were a little bit close. Or, we're coming off a bye week, so we were a little rusty. Or, we got a big game next week, and so we were looking ahead. They always have an excuse lined up. You have to really convince them to show up and play at home, or anywhere for that matter. And they don't handle success well, which they had in the Mississippi State game, and they don't handle adversity well, which they faced in this game. And again, like, we always talk about, because we talked about this a lot early in the year of, like, hey, there's an opportunity for this team to quit, and they didn't do it early. They didn't do it for a long time. And last year, eventually, they finally find a moment where they're like, all right, let's just go ahead and quit now. Have they found that moment? Like, have they really quit? Well, I guess we'll find out in a couple weeks, but man, dude, it is just crazy how, like, no matter what happens, good or bad, you just know they're not going to respond well to it.
It's so strange, man. And I almost, like, let's say they come out in 2 weeks against Texas, and I don't think they're going to win that game, but, like, they play really well, you know what I mean? And just compete, and they're flying around, like they were earlier in the season. Then I just kind of want to go in that position. Like, I want to go in that defensive meeting room and be like, so what happened against Ole Miss? Like, I don't know.
I will guarantee you they lose by less against Texas, who is an objectively better football team than Ole Miss.
Absolutely.
There's no chance in hell it's going to look as bad as it looked there, which, again, I'm not giving the football team. I'm saying that's why what they did Saturday is so unacceptable. And anyone trying to talk around that and be like, well, actually, no, like, that was disgusting, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you for sure, man. Okay. I'm tired of talking about this. And what sucks is, like, we've spent a lot of time in the last, 24 hours talking about this and breaking it down. And damn it, we're gonna have to do it again Monday on Inside Arkansas Live because
Be
everybody's gonna want to talk about it. Everybody's gonna want to have answers. We'll do it. We don't run from the grind around here, but it's like, man, it it's not okay. Not okay.
No.
But whatever, we're getting out of here. But thank you to everybody who's been tapping in and watching along. After some losses, like apathy can set in, like we joke around because somebody called us fair weather podcasters after being like, hey, they did what they were supposed to do against Mississippi State. And we were like, no, you guys are fair weather listeners, because every time they lose, you stop tapping in, you disappear on us, you give up like the secondary did. But for the most part, since the end of this game, I think people are pissed off enough to where they kind of want to hear everybody else vent, which is what we've been doing. So thank you for listening. We appreciate that. And for the continued support. So make sure you're subscribed where you need to be subscribed. Inside Arkansas YouTube channel. That thing is blowing up. There's so much content there. Football, basketball, you name it. We really have a lot going on. And I think it's a really good resource for people. So if you're not subscribed, please do that and just check it out. Why not? What do you have to lose? Podcast forums. Hey, Pot of That Nature. Go find it. Apple, Spotify. Same thing with Pot at the Palace for basketball. Same thing with our Inside Arkansas live shows. Like if you're not able to catch it in the moment every day from noon to 1:30, you can do it on YouTube. You can also find it in podcast form and go back and listen to it later, maybe when you're commuting back from home after work. So do that for us. We appreciate it. And we're going to get out of here, man. It's been I'd say fun, maybe therapeutic. I don't know. Whatever.
I didn't expect to yell as much as I did. I'll be honest.
I didn't either. Yeah. Now we gotta save our voices because we're gonna get ready to talk about some basketball here in a moment. So anyway, thank you guys as always. For Andrew Ellis, been Curtis Wilkerson with Inside Arkansas and Pot of That Nature. We'll see you guys soon. Have a good one.